Hey guys, it's Zach from Myshire Farm. Tonight is our 5th night of our live YouTube videos for question and answering. I am by myself tonight. I did not get anybody else involved tonight. It's Friday and a lot of things are going on here. When you join, feel free to ask any questions and I'll be happy to answer. How we do it is if it goes 2 minutes without any questions, then I'll just sign off and be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. But I did want to bring up some things because I do know a lot of people are watching these not live, but after I post them. And there were two things that I wanted to mention. One, yesterday we had talked about sales, like having a sale, and I do not believe in having sales. Because if you have sales, that means you're overpriced and you're taking too much of a profit. So we do have customer appreciation because we cannot do this without you. So when we hit our goals for the quarter or for the month or for the year or whatever, then I'll be happy to give some of that back. But we price accordingly where it's fair for us and fair for you. So that's why we do not have sales. So I wanted to explain that. So I see a couple people are joining. If you have any questions, feel free to ask any questions concerning the quail, as far as how to raise, how to breed, genetics, anything like that. Is it a problem to wash your eggs before incubation? No, we washed our eggs. Well, we've never washed our eggs for incubation. If you're wanting to clean them a little bit, do 50% Listerine and 50% water and spray them. I wouldn't recommend washing them, but we stopped doing that. We only use clean eggs as it is. So if they're dirty in any way, then usually we just don't use them. Or we'll wash them and sell them as eating eggs. But we just decided not to do that anymore. But there's nothing wrong with it. We just found that we got a little bit better of a hatch rate without doing that. That's a good question. I would say that this week's Q&A has been a success. We've had a ton of people come on and ask a bunch of questions. Last night, people were telling us where they came from, and we had everyone from Texas to Florida to Iowa to Ohio to Michigan to Tasmania to a couple people in the UK to Florida. It was really cool. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Nevada, there you go. I don't think we've had a Nevada. We have had Arizona, but it's been pretty cool. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Pretty much, I'm going to stay on here for a couple minutes in case there's any questions. If there's not, I understand that it's a Friday. We have been doing this all week, so it might be a slow night, which is completely fine. But I want to stay on for a couple minutes at least to make sure that no one has any questions for tonight. We did talk yesterday about maybe doing this once a week and having a theme, whether it's a genetics week or a marketing week or a sales week or whatever. So that is up for discussion also. I'll be thinking about that. While I'm waiting on any questions, I can show you the new quail barn. This is obviously it. And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. This is the outside of it. Obviously, it's still a disaster because it's under construction, but it's coming along, looking pretty cool. And we did use the shop today for the first time for our butchering. We try to butcher once every 2 weeks. So again, we're still working on it. This is one side of our shipping area. It is really cool looking. Very, very, very cool looking, very bright. A lot of lights in here, which is great. Obviously, this wall will look like this wall when it's done. And then we've got all this. That's gonna be a little storage area for all of our butcher equipment. We've got this for a bathroom. It's kind of cool. We have a ton of people that come all over the US traveling, and they'll wanna stop by. So we thought a bathroom would be a nice idea for everybody. And then this is our brooder room. Again, it is a disaster, but we can only do so much in a day. Noticed you had the clear heat lamps in your brooders. Do you find them better than the red bulbs? Well, yeah, we see no difference in the red or the white, and the whites are usually easier to find and cheaper. So we just use the whites, but we actually have not seen, we never saw a difference between the two. But that's a very good question. Very good question. I think it's just kind of preference. And in case there is more questions or this starts picking up, it usually starts slow and starts picking up. These are just my points of view. Okay, so it's just from my experiences. So there is more than one way to do things. So again, a lot of this is personal preference. Some of it is there is only one way to do it, and things like that. But yeah, either way, it won't hurt either way. And we have any other questions going on right now? While I'm waiting for any questions, I can kind of show you. I've shown you guys before, but this is going to be the new area where our breeders are going to be. So it's quite large. Really happy with it. A ton of windows, so a ton of natural light, which is pretty cool. And then obviously we've got the fans up there that's going to keep it pretty cool and dust free, or a lot less dust than what we're used to, so that's pretty cool. We've got the big lights there, and then these lights are gonna go right over the cages as well, so that'll be pretty cool. So they're gonna have lights from here and lights from up there, and then the regular lights, and so we're pretty happy with it. We're a little behind schedule, but you know, we're doing it ourselves, and you know, we started way earlier than what we needed it, so we're okay with that. When trying to come up with a new color, do you use a full colony cage or smaller control groups? Definitely smaller control groups. You know, ideally when you're working on a new color, and this is, thank you, Scott. Ideally when you're coming up with a new color, it's very hard, and it is very time consuming. So if someone said, yeah, I'll just say it. This is my opinion, remember, so I could be wrong. In my opinion, if someone says that they come up with a new color and they say it only took them 3 months, then there's gonna be an issue with that. If you're coming up with a new color, it probably should take close to 2 years for you to do it correctly. And with that, you can't just have a full colony cage, because you need you know, every male is different, every hen is different. You know, you're going to be switching a lot in and out. You're going to be crossbreeding and inbreeding, and you know, you're going to be mixing some things up here and there. You're going to do first generation to third generation. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that you're going to be doing. So doing a full colony cage with a research color is you're putting a nail in the coffin there. But good question. Any other questions for right now? It's 8:36. If there's no other questions by 11 minutes, then I will call it a night and just post this video. It's been growing significantly every night. I think the first night we were on for about 30 minutes. And then the past couple of nights, it's been anywhere from 65 to 75 minutes with a ton of feedback, a ton of questions. So I'll completely understand if it's not like that every night. This is mainly for you guys anyway, so I'm good with that. Where did you source your original stock for your jumbo wilds, and do you use the same source to get new blood? We do not. Our first source came from someone local, actually on Craigslist, and then we also got some, we ordered some in, and then we kept those two lines separate, and then we put some males of one line with the hens of the other, and then put the hens of the other line with the males of the other, and then right now we've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 colony cages of jumbo wilds, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 different bloods. So as far as us having to crossbreed and things like that, it's going to take a very, very long time before anything like that happens. But we obviously did that on purpose. When did you start doing other colors when getting started? We actually got our Jumbo Wilds and we ordered SSCs right away. So immediately. Good question. Someone did ask me today, I did forget about this. Someone did ask me today what we recommend you start with, and that all depends on what you're looking for. If you're just wanting to have some fun with it, which a lot of people were doing, then get a mix and have them, you know, hatch out and get a bunch of different colors and have fun with it. If you're wanting to raise them for meat and eggs and possibly down the road make some money off of them, I would start with Jumbo Wilds and do things like that. I do work with a couple different farms, and what they do is they do one color a month, and they're pretty happy with that. WooCommerce is what we use for our internet, or for our website. Other than that, I don't know much more because that is Jenna's department. I am very rarely inside. Most of the time, if I'm on my phone or I've got my tablet, it's in the quail barn. Most of my stuff, as far as note taking and record keeping and things like that, is on those things. So I very rarely am inside during the day. Do you have every color quail? As far as I know, there are no other colors that someone else has that we do not, including international, as far as I know. But again, I am definitely not online as much as I used to. I am not researching what other people were doing as much as I used to. Not because I don't want to, and not because it's not important, but because, you know, life is hectic. Do you supplement mealworms to help on weight? No, we do not. Now, when I was talking, I'm going to tie into this. That's a very good question. So there's, according to the PhD doctor that helped us create our own feed, there is 2 absolute vital things that you need to have a strong, healthy Jumbo Wild. It is genetics and it is feed. If you are capable or able to create your own feed or find something that you're extremely happy with, you should not have to be supplementing anything. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I've just got a random quail just walking around. I'm gonna go see why he's out here. That's weird. So obviously you've really got to work on a good breeding program, which we've worked with multiple people and taken advice from a ton of people and created our own. And then we decided that it was worth it to make our own feed. Now, if you have, I would say, less than 200 quail, it would definitely, for sure, not be worth doing that, because it is very expensive. But with how much feed we go through, we decided that we were willing to pay a little bit extra for it. Wonder if you're a male. I bet you are. Well, we're repopulating the world with quail, one quail at a time. How do you set boundaries with the business versus family time? Do you answer emails every day, etc.? That is a great question. That is an amazing question. And the best advice that I can give you, and obviously I have not worked it out completely yet because I feel like I am always behind and always overwhelmed. But the best advice that I can give you so far is, so my circumstances, I have 5 children. You know, we've got this farm, we've got other animals, we've got this business that's growing. and so on and so forth, you know, everyday life, things like that, right? Guys, I'm gonna go find somewhere to sit. I'm exhausted. So to me, you need to have a controlled chaos. So I talk a lot about being organized and being planned and writing things down. And I really believe in all that. But you have to be flexible. So for example, every morning or every night, I slack on it a little bit, but one or the other, I always come up with a game plan of what I want to get done that next day. And then I prioritize it from top to bottom. If I don't get to everything, then that's what is at the top of the next day, right? So for example, I had to leave early to take my kids to practice last night. So obviously I didn't get everything on my list done. So that was the first thing that happened this morning. So again, it's got to be a controlled chaos. You got to have a plan, but you've got to be willing to deviate from that plan and not stress out. I'm a big believer that if you want something to work, then you've got to put in the time and effort to do so. So yes, I work 80 hours a week, but we have lunches together, we have dinners together, you know, even if you're working 80 hours a week, you get a little bit of time with the kids. So it's hard. That's hard to answer, and everybody's situation is a little bit different. So, but yeah, that would be the best advice I can give you is a controlled chaos. Have a plan, stick to it. Whatever you don't finish that day, then you know that's what you start with the next day. And then another piece of advice is if you're getting everything you want to get done every day, you're not putting enough on your to-do list, right? So just keep that in mind also. Is there anything special you do whoa, hold on. Is there anything special you do to your hatching eggs before incubation? No. Nope. I mean, when I collect them, I'm very particular when I collect. So I've mentioned in these live videos so far that George has came here and he's living on the farm now. I first met him as a customer of mine, and then we became very good friends, and then he became an admin in a couple of the groups that I have on Facebook and so on and so forth. And then it just turned out that it worked out great. That he was able to move here, and it works for him, it works for us, and things like that, right? So with that being said, I still use my 2 teenager girls for help, and Jenna obviously helps, and we have a lot of stuff to do, but I'm the only one that collects eggs. I'm very particular. I know what I'm looking for. I know, you know, if something messes up, I want it to be on my hands. So as far as eggs go, I'm very, very cautious and careful with that. How do you get rid of rats eating your quails? You know, we had an issue with that at first. Let's see, 2 winters ago, we had the craziest, scariest rat you will ever imagine in your entire life. Like, I'm telling you, this thing was the size of a flipping raccoon, man. Like, this thing was huge. And it was just weird and vicious. And we actually called a couple people out, and they're like, oh, there's no way it's a rat. Because what he was doing was he was reaching through the cage, he was killing them and then leaving them. And he's like, no, if it was a rat, they'd be eating them and they'd only be doing one at a time. And I'm like, no, this rat's killing like 5 or 6 a night. Like, no, there's no way it's a rat. So anyways, we got rid of the rat, thankfully. And then we took some precautions, rebuilt the old barn a little bit and fortified it. And we've not had issues since. But it's everybody recommended to us that we put poison down. And even though our quail are not on the ground, they're in cages, I still was not comfortable with that. And we really don't like to use chemicals or poisons on the farm anywhere. So we took the long route, but you know, we'd rather not use that stuff here. But that's a hard call. My best advice with that would be you know, get with your local area and find out, find information about them there and see what other people do. And that's what we came up with here. Is we called a couple different farmers that we knew that live around, that's been farmers for a long time with animals, and you know, we gathered as much information as possible and said, okay, this is, I think, how we can capture this thing. But live traps will work, poison will work, we just never wanted to use that, and things like that. But yeah, and definitely in different areas, different regions, you know, you're worrying about snakes, you're worrying about predators such as, you know, skunks and possums and raccoons, and you've got rats, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff. So you definitely need to protect them and keep your eye on that. Good question. Any other questions right now? We're sitting at 21 minutes exactly, so I'll wait until it says 24 in case anybody else has some questions. Again, we're open to pretty much everything except for the conveyor system. That's just the only thing that's kind of off limits as of right now as far as the Q&A goes, but I'd be happy to talk to you about marketing or selling or raising or breeding or genetics or whatever. Will the quail still lay through the winter? They will. They'll slow down. You know, if you've seen our videos on YouTube, we've done tours of our old barn. We've also done tours of our new barn, but it's still not completely set up yet. And it's changing every day because we're working on it every day. But if you watch some of our newest, well, they're not new, but the last tour we did of our old barn, I showed you that we put in a furnace. We did not put in a furnace so that they would lay better. We put in a furnace so that the water system did not freeze during the winter. So they're very hardy. You know, obviously they don't have to be inside, but they definitely need to have an opportunity to get out of the elements. But that's the only reason why we put it in there. And then if you have a bucket system, I would highly suggest that you put some electrolytes in there, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. You could even do it once a month. And then when the weather changes, those electrolytes will definitely help for them to stop, because it's not just the winter, it's when weather changes at all. So from spring to fall, from fall to winter, from winter to spring, so on and so forth, when the weather changes dramatically, and in Ohio, we go from 90 degrees to 30 degrees, and then we go back to 90 degrees, and then we go back to 30 degrees, and so it's just very up and down. So those electrolytes help them stay consistent. But that's a wonderful question. But they usually will slow down during the winter, but you should still be getting them. If your quails stop laying for about 2 weeks, after a week of having no to very little eggs, you really need to get some advice or have a game plan, because if they go 2 weeks without laying, then it's really hard to get them jump started again. But that's a great question. Did anyone cover what we should sell 3 or 4 week birds for? No one has asked me that, and I cannot tell you what you should sell them for, but I can tell you how we came up with our price, if that would help. So, number one, you need to know the cost. You need to know how much it costs you to raise a bird. You need to know how much you're willing to make, because I still enjoy this, and it is still a passion of mine, and I think it always will be. If it wasn't, then I think it would have worn off by now. So I enjoy what I do, right? But on the same token, the feeding and the watering every day, and if you've got 100 or 50 or 20, then it's not that big of a deal. But when you have 3,000, 4,000, you've got 12, 15 brooders going, you've got all the breeders, you've got the grow outs, and so on and so forth, then it gets very overwhelming every day and very repetitive, and things like that. So you need to sit down and decide how much you're willing to take out of your time and what that how much how much you should receive from that, plus how much it costs. Once you have that, you need to look at your market and see what they sell them for. If there's not a market in your area, then, you know, you obviously want to experiment. There's always the right price. You never want to start low, because then if you go from low to high, people will stop buying. But if you go from high to low, people will buy. But if you start low and then increase sales, well, you're going to lose the customers that you had at first. So we sell our 3 or 4 week olds for $5 for straight runs, $7 for hens. We think that's fair because we're raising them for 3 weeks. We guarantee that they'll arrive in the male healthy, and they will be alive when they arrive. So we guarantee that. Obviously, we can't guarantee that they will, but we will take care of you. And then it also takes a lot of food, a lot of time, electricity. We're incubating the eggs. We're doing a lot of the hard work. So $5 for straight run, $7 for hens and males, the sexable kind, I think is fair. And that would be fair all throughout the US. So if you're just selling locally, you know, if you're in California, if you're in New York, if you're, you know, it just depends on where you're at, because price is different everywhere, you know. So for example, I've had a lot of California, Washington customers that go, wow, you are so cheap. And I'm like, we're not cheap. You know, we're fair. I hate the word cheap. We're not cheap. But then there's people that are in different areas or in a different economy or in a different place in their life, and so it's fair, but it's definitely not cheap for them. I know that some people save up to buy them, and I know some people just turn around and decide they're gonna buy them that day. So you got to know your own market and where you're going to sell it. So if you're going to sell it all throughout the US, you know, and let's say you live in California, well, you're going to have to lower your price, because if someone is in Ohio, they're not going to want to pay that California price, or so on and so forth, if that helps. Did you start business inside or outside? They have always been inside. The first year we did it, we had a quail run. And so they were on a cage on the ground outside, and then we moved it every day. They did not like it. They were happy, but they did not lay any eggs, because we were constantly moving them. And then we put a bunch in our aviary, and that thing is huge. It's almost the size of half the size of our new barn. We put about 300 out there, I guess, and just let them roam, and they did not lay. So in our experience, they like to be together and feel safe. That's more important to them than having a bunch of room. So we've experimented with it, but they've always been inside. What's the story about jumbo quails and standard wells, where they come from? What's the different country? What's the story about jumbo quails and standard wells, where they come from? What's the I'm sorry, I don't really understand the question, but so I can tell you what a jumbo is. A jumbo is anything that is consistently over 10 ounces at 10 weeks old. Okay, so for example, I've got golds that are 12 ounces. I've got SSCs that are 14, right? But that is not consistent. That is more of the rare. But our jumbo wilds are consistently at 14 ounces. So does that mean I don't have a 16 ounce jumbo? No, I do. I have some. Does that mean I don't have an 18 ounce jumbo? No, we've had those also. But that is, again, if you're going to be advertising, you have to boost yourself up and explain to people why they should buy from you. but you can't take the best scenario and say this is what we have. You know, I can't take a picture of the jumbo wild that I have that's 19.5 ounces and say, hey, buy our jumbo wilds, this one's 19.5, because theirs are probably not going to be that. And if they are, and they buy, let's say they buy 100 of them, they might get one that size, but the rest of them are going to be in that 14 ounce range. But that's a good question. But jumbos are anything over 10 ounces at 10 weeks, and it's a continuous process. So you really do need 3 to 4 generations to say that it is a continuous thing. Hard to come up with a cost because the startup was so high. That is true. How we did it, or how I did it, we kind of rearranged it. But when I started coming up with cost of building the cages and building the incubators and the brooders, and what we already spent on brooders before we started building, and the styrofoam incubators and the eggs that we purchased, and so on and so on and so on, I took a 2-year time. I took all those startup expenses, I divided it by 2 years, and I said, okay, this is how much I want to make. You know, so it'll take me 2 years to make the money back that I've already spent. And then I went from there as far as, okay, well, how many am I going to sell a year? Okay, well, if I sell this much a year and I divide it by this number, then, you know, if I add on an extra, you know, 20 cents to every live bird, or if I add on every, you know, 2 pennies to every hatching egg, then I could make up my startup cost back in 2 years. So that's kind of how that works. And then once it's paid off, once the startup is paid off, well, then you don't have to change your prices. You just make a little bit extra because those expenses are gone. So once we paid off our expenses, we seem to always have expenses because we keep upgrading and building and so on and so forth. But once we have some time where we're not building anything and we have paid everything off, then typically that goes to a separate account for experiments or research or development of some kind, or, you know, improving our product or whatever. My quail stopped laying. How can I get them laying again? That is a very good question, but I would need a lot more information as far as where, how long have they stopped laying, how old they are, what's the ratio, where are you, things like that. So if you want to text me at 937-760-7282, I would be happy to help you individually. But the most general form, throw some electrolytes in their water. That should help their immune system boost up a little bit. Check your feed and make sure their calcium is at a minimum of 2.5%. And then make sure your ratio is about 5 to 1. And again, age, you know, once they hit about 1.5 years, they're gonna slow down drastically. So there's just a lot of variables in that, but I'd be happy to help you one-on-one if you'd like. Evening from the UK again. Welcome back, Scott. How long has it taken you to get where you are now? Well, that is a great question. And I know what you mean, but I'm going to take it in a different route. The short answer to your question is we've been on the farm now for 7 years. So a long time. But we've definitely went a lot slower than what we wanted to. We've definitely put ourselves in check a lot of times, because if you research it, if you do look at the numbers, 87% of failed businesses is because they grew too fast, and they just saw dollar signs. And typically, again, this is just a statistic, but if you're an entrepreneur, you know, if you're very intrigued by that stuff, usually you also have a sales mentality. You also have a selling person's mentality. I think it was a majority, I don't remember the percentage exactly, but it was definitely over 50% of entrepreneurs have a background in sales of some sort. So, see, I have a sales background. So it's very hard for me to slow down because I see a sale and then I'm on a wait list on Jumbo Wilds and I wanted directly to just say, okay, well, let's increase our Jumbo Wilds by double. Okay, well, this is it's not a race. It's a marathon. So you gotta slow and steady wins the race kind of thing. So just slow down. I said in another video, typically you want to be sold out or on a week or two wait list for about 3 months before you decide to increase, because you want to make sure it's steady, just not right now. And that's what a lot of people mess up on statistically as entrepreneurs, is they see the business right away, whether it's a startup and everybody's trying it out, or it's just a great push at that moment, and then they increase and add all this capital, but then add all this debt to it, and then it's not it doesn't last, and then now you're in way over your head. So slow and steady wins the race, but we've done it for 7 years. And there's that answer. Let's see, I think you touched on it the other day, but what specific fruit do you put in the box with the teens, and how much do you include heat pads ever? No, actually, that's a great question. That's an amazing question. I did touch on this the other day. I did not talk about the heat pads, but I'd like to. So in the boxes we raise, on our farm, we raise cucumbers. We have a couple apple trees. We do sometimes buy the apples, and then we have oranges that we don't have here, but we do purchase. And then so we give them a variety of those. Typically with our cucumbers, we cut them in half and then we split them. And so each side of the box gets a half of a cucumber. And each side of the box has 5 quail in it. So 5 quail gets a half a cucumber is how we do it. If it's oranges, they typically get a full orange. If it's an apple, they get a half an apple. Great question. The heat pads. So if the quail are off the heat lamp, no matter what season you're in, they do not need heat pads, ever, okay? Now the eggs, when we started, we did heat pads during the winter. Well, our fertility rate dropped dramatically our first year on shipped eggs, and we just assumed it was due to the winter. The second year it happened again, and we were like, yeah, maybe we should just not sell during the winter. One day a customer asked if we would not put the heat pads in there. We said, sure, that's not a problem. We didn't put the heat pads in. They got an 80% hatch rate in the middle of winter. So I said, let's just experiment for the rest of this winter. Let's not put the heat pads in. So we didn't. And I believe our average hatch rate that year, and this was a couple years ago, I believe it went from a 47% to a 54% immediately. Now, last year we ended the entire year last year at a 63% hatch rate on chipped eggs. So far this year, I have not calculated August. I only calculated at the end of the month. But from the feedback that I'm getting, which is not 100%, but it is a majority of people that tell me how many they hatch. We're averaging a 64% on hatching eggs. But it seems as though that the heat pads were actually starting some of them to incubate. And then it got cold when the heat pads, because they're usually only good for like 4 hours. So then it would stop incubating, which means it's really messing up your fertility and hatch rate. Do you have some incubator or good brand incubators for recommendation? We do not. That is an amazing question. I do get that quite a bit, and eventually I am going to do that research. But because we build our own incubators, I am not very familiar with store-bought. My recommendation when people ask me that is, if you go to Facebook and you join the group Newbie Quail Lovers, NEWBIE Quail Lovers, post the question on there, and there is a ton of amazing people, customers of mine, people that have not purchased from me, that have a ton of experience with that. But I am not the best to ask about the incubators. because we just haven't bought any in a long time. Do you ever do game fairs? Thank you. We do not. I would eventually like to do that. I have. So here's a little nugget that I don't think I've mentioned before. This kind of has to do with the marketing and things like that. If you're really into starting something, you know, a quail business or a farm business of some sort or something like that, then I really recommend that you write down all your ideas for marketing, right? And then when you see something, you could see something on Facebook, you could be passing a store that catches your attention, and you've got to be open-minded. So if you are, let's say you're passing Foot Locker. I don't know. I've not been to a Foot Locker in like 15 years. I don't know why that popped into my head. Let's say you go to Foot Locker. You're walking past, and then they have this huge sign in the door, which like everybody else does, but that one really got your attention. Now, even though you didn't buy because you didn't need shoes and that's not why you were there, the ad got your attention, right? You want to really think about why, write that down. You need to have a book, like a journal, that has all your marketing ideas in it. And then you can pull those out. You don't want to use all your marketing ideas at one time. You want to use them slow because if you know, you don't want to throw everything at it and then your business is thriving and then you run out of ideas and then you just start doing the same things over again, because then, you know, people get bored with that. So you want to go, you know, you want to take your time on doing that. But the reason I went on that rant is because when we triple in the new barn, there is multiple things on my list that I want to do. But until we have the quantity to do it, I really don't want to get involved with a bunch of stuff. But yes, I do want to go to the fairs. I've got, I don't have it with me, but I think there's 12 things that I want to get involved with, and I probably have 27 marketing ideas that I've never done before, and I'm just waiting for the right time to do them. So that's why I went on that rant. There was a purpose for that, I swear. Do you decrease your stock during slower months? No, we do not. I'm not saying that's not a good idea. I'm not saying that's not a good idea, but with our breeding program, I can't do that. So I guess if we got super smart about it, we could probably come up with a breeding program that's similar to ours, where I could do that, but no. And luckily, we've been in business for a while. We've had a lot of success and a lot of luck where I have different avenues. And again, I know I've said this every night, and I'm sure you guys are tired of it, and I get it, but that is definitely why you want to have multiple sources for your sales. Because if you're doing it right and you've sliced up the pie correctly, then you're not going to have a slow time. Now, there's going to be slower times, but you're going to have other outlets that you can do that with. So just keep that in mind. That does take a long time. That does require you to create a name for yourself and a reputation. That does take time with trial and error. So yes, the first couple years we were doing this, during the slow season, we were throwing wheelbarrows full of eggs away. But I wasn't using the pie like I should have. I was focusing all of my time and energy on one source that I left these other sources out. And then when I needed them, because my source was slow, I didn't put enough time and energy into them, so they weren't willing to buy when I needed them to. So I can't stress that enough. Do you create wait lists or take orders and let them know it will be X time before they will be ready? I have found with wait lists, it is a lot of effort following up and a lot of cancels from those. That is an amazing question, and I have a very strong opinion on that. And again, you do not have to agree with what I say. It is just my experiences or my policy that I chose to implement. And here's my deal on that. We do have a wait list. We only have a wait list for up to 2 weeks. We only have a wait list on eggs. We do not have a wait list on birds. And they do pay in advance. So January, February, March is the hot season for quail eggs. On the website, on eBay, on Facebook, on the auction site, January, February, March is just when it just goes crazy. So if you want to listen to that, you need to be, if you want to do this, your whole, from right now until December 31st, your goal is not to make as much money as possible, but your goal is to be ready for January, February, March. That's how busy it gets, right? So we had a ton of people call me every day, January, February, March, and said, hey, I went online, I tried to buy your jumbo wilds, they're out of stock. And I said, yeah, once they're off, once we're 2 weeks out on hatching eggs, I take them off the website. You cannot be put on a wait list. You cannot pay in advance. And that's just my policy. As far as live birds go, there are so many variables with live birds. I don't know what the hatch rate's gonna be. I don't know what's gonna hatch out. I don't know what's gonna be male and female. I don't know what's gonna happen. What if, by chance, my electricity goes out and the incubator goes down and I don't catch it and I have a horrible hatch, but then I've sold 200 live birds? Well, you know, they were waiting 2 weeks for them to hatch and now they're gonna wait an extra, you know, so I don't like doing that. That prevents cancels. So I'm very upfront when they order. You know, I let them know it's gonna be a week and a half to 2 weeks out. 95 to 98% of them are completely fine with that. Some of them are just, they need them right then, which is fine. And you know, they can find someone else. That's not a big deal at all. No harm, no foul. Next time, purchase from us, we'll be ready for you. Not a big deal. But once I'm 2 weeks out, I don't want to guarantee anything. And I'm very, very, very big on guaranteeing things. I want you to get the product that you paid for. I want you to get the service that you paid for. I want you to get what you expect within reason, which I can tell you a great story about that. And I feel like once I'm 2 weeks out on something, it's very hard for me to keep track of everything and very hard for me to guarantee everything. So that's why I don't do that. But that was a great question. What is your main marketing that makes in money? Hatching, commercials, contracts, etc. It is a very, very even split. Very, very even split. I would say hatching eggs probably will take the lead by a hair, but only because I have multiple areas to do that with. And it seems as though that once you get a commercial account, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, then you're rolling, right? But it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of frustration to get that first one. So if you have a corporate account and it came fairly fast and fairly easy and it kind of just fell in your lap, count your blessings, because that is not the norm at all. Can you show your incubator? Yeah, I can walk over there and show you real quick. Yeah, I'll show you. It's a disaster right now. I just candled, haven't put everything away. I was in the middle of candling like 1,500 eggs, and then I looked down at my phone and it was like 6:53, and I was like, oh crap. So time got away from me. So again, you guys have been absolutely phenomenal tonight with all your questions. A lot of great questions on here. How did you start your breeding program? Top 3 pointers. You need, okay, number 1, you need to have an ultimate goal. You need to know exactly where you want to go. Number 2, don't get overwhelmed. So for example, what I mean by that is, this is our incubator. This is one of them. This is what we call white tray, like so. Fits 221 eggs. We can double stack. So each row can fit 440, I don't remember, 442, holy gosh, 442. So, so yeah. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 14 that we can fit 442 on in one incubator. We've got another Gigantor that is starting. And then we have another one that is down right now because we're rebuilding it. But that is our incubator. Sorry, back to how did you start your breeding program? So what I mean by don't get overwhelmed is, you know, we have 22 colors, right? We were focusing for a long time on everything at one time. To me, it is much easier and way more productive to have a game plan and make it as simple as possible. So, you know, we said, well, what's our biggest seller? Well, our biggest seller is Jumbo Wilds. Okay, well, why are we focusing on all these colors if we think that our Jumbo Wilds can be better? So for a year and a half, we focused on Jumbo Wilds, and our Jumbo Wilds went from 11 ounces to 14 ounces, and the eggs went from 11 grams to 15 grams extremely consistently. They are much healthier, they are much larger, they are much meatier, they're much more docile, and so we are extremely happy with where they are. Now, that does not mean that we stop with those, but we're happy with those, so now we're moving on to the next one. So one at a time, maybe two at a time. And then my third pointer would be, don't ever stop your breeding program, you know? So when I said I'm very happy with where we are on the Jumbo Wilds, that does not mean we ever stopped. We still have a game plan. It's not as intense. So you want to slow your intensity down on some and start with others. But that's a great question. Is your incubators heated with lights or elements? Elements. The lights are just for show. But we actually have hot plates in there. Once I clean it out, which I will do after I finish this, I will show you guys tomorrow. But I dropped a couple eggs and I dropped it into the fan, and the fan, anyways, it's a disaster right now, and I don't want to show you because I'm embarrassed. But I'll show you guys that. And I think we're going to even do another video because we're in the middle of building our next lockdown, and Papa is doing a long video that we're going to cut down and edit and things like that on how to build your own incubator and how to build your own lockdown. So that'll be pretty cool. But our lockdown is going to be heated up by like a stove fryer. And then our incubators are heating elements. They're hot plates that we found a couple years ago that do very well for us. That's a good question. All right, so we're sitting at 5314. I will wait until 56 in case there's any more questions. Again, if there's not any more questions, I really appreciate your guys' input and help and support and questions. I'm really glad that a lot of people took advantage of it this week. I know some of you guys, like Sadie, Scott, Jesus, I know a lot of you guys have been on, if not every night, almost every night, and that's absolutely amazing. I hope you've gotten some stuff out of it. But I did want to share that if you guys need better information or a clear answer to one of my questions, feel free to contact me individually. I will be happy to help you. In these Q&As, I really try to do a broad, general explanation of things because everything can get so complex. So I really try to give you a simple answer, but sometimes, you know, individually, you might need more of a complex answer because you're at a different point. But you're more than welcome to contact me. I can tell you that when I quit my job and did this full-time last June, I was very proud of the fact that our customer wait time as far as if they text me or messaged Myshire or emailed or things like that was 24 hours. And Sadie, this kind of goes back to one of your questions, or not 24 hours, 1 hour. So last June, if you would have texted me or messaged me or sent me a voicemail or messaged the Myshire Farm Facebook page or emailed myself or Jenna or whatever, we had an average time of getting back to you of 1 hour. And I was very proud of that. Now it's 27 hours. And that is just because we've grown so much that it just, you know, I get back with you as fast as I can. Some people I get back with immediately because my phone's right in front of me. And then sometimes my phone is down and I'm, you know, butchering and then cutting the grass and then running errands and then taking care of the kids and then got family time and then feeding water. And so there's just always something going on. So it's not deliberate. It's not because I just don't want to answer you. It's because I just can't have my phone on me at all times. So it is 56, so I will wait 1 more minute in case there's any other questions. And then if there's not, I'll post this video and then I will be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. And then we'll also be back on Sunday at 7 p.m. To finalize the week and go from there. And then on Monday, I'll be posting just a quick short video. It won't be live. It'll just be a video asking if people want to do this weekly with a topic, you know. So, you know, next Sunday at 7 p.m. it could be genetics or selling, or the next week could be, you know, how to raise or how to incubate or so on and so forth. So if you don't need help in that area, then you would just skip that week and things like that. So, all right, guys, it's been a couple of minutes with no questions. So again, I will be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. If you do have any questions, thank you very much for participating. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.